Thank you for attending this lecture, which is the first in this format for us. I'm Hugo Daniel. I'm the head of the School of Modernities, l'École des Modernités in French. So tonight's lecture is live from Lahore, where Samina Iqbal is living and working. Samina is an artist. She's also an art historian and academic. She is assistant professor at the Lahore School of Economics in Pakistan. Her research focuses on the study of modern art in Pakistan in the first decade of its establishment. And she's currently working on extending her research by undertaking comparative study of what modern art entailed for other neighboring countries of Pakistan. So it's a parallel dialogue. She's building on dialogue with the Western canon. I shall also mention that Samina co-created a groundbreaking show on Lahore Art Circle, a circle of artists she will be talking about tonight. A groundbreaking show she organized in 2017. She's currently working on the manuscript of her forthcoming book called Modern Art in Pakistan and Lahore Art Circle. Tonight's lecture is called A New Beginning and the Modern Art of Pakistan, Lahore Art Circle to Pakistan Group, London. Samina's presentation will focus on exploring the conditions giving rise to the modern art of Pakistan in the first decade of its establishment through a small artists collective, not very well known, which is called Lahore Art Circle. This circle was active between 1952 and 1958, and it was created by an artist, Shakir Ali, who studied under André Lhote in his studio in Paris in 1949. So this lecture will present the rise of modern abstract art in Pakistan under Shakir Ali's tutelage and some of his years in Paris. I will now let Samina talk, and we shall all wait until the end to ask questions. Thank you, everyone. And Samina, it's yours.
Thank you, Hugo. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the School of Modernities at the Foundation Jakamati for providing me with this wonderful opportunity. Of course, I become the guinea pig to start the virtual lectures, but I'm happy to do this. And I hope that with all the technical issues and everything, it goes well. I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. And I would like to thank again for this opportunity. So my presentation title today, like Hugo mentioned, is A New Beginning in the Modern Art of Pakistan. And I'm looking at Lahore Art Circle, which is a very small collective, and I talk about that. So, it's really a journey of Lahore Art Circle to Pakistan Group London, which I would be presenting. I'm aware that a lot of my audience here today are familiar with the colonial history of Indian subcontinent. But the way I have mapped my today's presentation is keeping in mind people who are not familiar with the historical context. Therefore, I will start with a brief historical context of the Indian subcontinent. I will then describe the prevalent art practices at the time of Pakistan's establishment, which gave rise to the condition that fostered the modern abstract art movement through a small artist collective called Lahore Art Circle. Having said this, by no means in this 1 hour or 45 minutes, I will be able to give a full-fledged art history of Pakistan, but important junctures and paradigm shifts that happened in the history of Pakistani art. I also want to mention here that as I do my presentation, I will be addressing the artists by their first names, as that is the custom in Pakistan. It just sounds strange calling them by their last name, and several of them share a common last name, and so it just creates a lot of confusion. So just to avoid that confusion, I will be using the first names. The partition of Pakistan, I'm sorry, I'm also juggling with the learning to, navigate with the PowerPoint as I speak. So the partition of the Indian subcontinent on August 14, 1947 ended nearly 2 centuries of colonial rule and divided the region into two separate nations, India and Pakistan. The partition was not only of the land and the governing apparatuses, financial wealth, private institutions, but also the hearts and minds of people. Regarding partition, modern scholars such as Wazira Zamida states in her book Long Partition that everything was divided, and I quote, from the vast machinery of colonial statecraft to table and chairs, weather instruments, and military hardware, to railway engineers and office clerks. People in government and military services were asked to choose which post-independence nation state they wanted to serve, end quote. During this time, massive historical migration took place, resulting in vast displacement and massacre, which profoundly affected people on both sides of the border. Under these circumstances, the first decade of Pakistani history, which I'm looking at, 1947 to 57, was traumatic. Every aspect of life in the newly established society was in a state of flux. The establishment scrupulously focused on constructing new government institutions as well as restructuring existing ones. The process encompassed the reorganization of cities, reallocation of properties, resettlement of refugees, and reformulation of the educational system and industrial infrastructure. These were the conditions of the nascent country. Among the millions of migrants were several visual artists as well who ended up settling in big cities, including Lahore and Karachi. However, the only renowned pre-partition established artist in Pakistan was Abdur Rahman, who was already settled in Lahore. His practice embodied the revival of Mughal miniature aesthetics in Bengal school style. And I'm showing you an example of his work, which you can see here. Now I would like to step back a bit and give you a brief view of showing the several different trends that's happening. These are the artistic practices that's happening in British India, some of which were happening simultaneously. And most of you will be aware of all these people. So it's like, the Bengal school style. And then you have Amrita Shergill, you have Jamni Roy, and you have Allah Baksh. You have Chughtai, of course, that I mentioned, and Amolka and Rabindranath Tagore. I now return to Pakistan at the time of its establishment, looking at the big picture. 3 major cities that I'm showing you right here. So you're looking at Lahore, Karachi, and Dhaka in East Pakistan, which used to be part of Pakistan till 1971. So Lahore is, of course, the center of all kinds of intellectual and cultural activities. And so I'm showing you the active artists working at that time. So if you see on the slide, I mentioned the names of people who were actively working at that time. And then in Karachi, Quaid-e-Azam, the founder of Pakistan, relocated one of his friend and neighbor called as Faizi Rahmin, who used to work in Mughal Persian style. In East Pakistan, you look at Zainul Abidin, who was a well-known artist then. I now zoom into Lahore, which is the locus of my talk today. I would like to briefly describe the city Lahore, where it is located, to contextualize how and why it became the center for intellectual discourse. Because of its geographical location, size, and rich history, Lahore has been a center of artistic and cultural activities for centuries in Western Punjab, just like Calcutta was in West Bengal in colonial India. Lahore houses some of the most beautiful Mughal architecture, including the Badshahi Mosque, Shalimar Garden, the mausoleum of Mughal Emperor Jahangir, Lahore Fort, and many more. The presence of these monuments indicates that Lahore was an all-time favorite for many kings, emperors of the Mughal empires, and ambitious and thoughtful individuals even before India was colonized. Lahore is considered as home to the artistic and intellectual elites of the Indian subcontinent in colonial India. And even today, it just holds a very special place. It is usually described as a city of gardens, colleges, poets, and newspapers. Since the 1920s, the largest number of Urdu literary journals, newspaper, and books, as well as best English language dailies, have been published from Lahore. Well known, few of them were the Lahore Chronicle, Civil and Military Gazettes, and the Punjab Observer, just to name a few. Returning to the art scene of Lahore, as I mentioned earlier, Chughtai was a towering artist, well established and well known nationally and internationally. After the establishment of Pakistan, he becomes the face of Pakistani art scene. And what you're seeing on the screen is that I'm mentioning that, what Pakistan inherited at the time of partition was basically the MODERNE School of Art, which was one of the 4 projects, colonial projects, to encourage and propagate vocational training in local crafts. Lockwood Kipling, father of the poet Rudyard Kipling, was the first principal of MODERNE School of Art. Besides Chughtai, there was Ustad Allah Baksh, a self-taught artist working in European academic style, who was also teaching at the MODERNE School of Art, but was nowhere close to Chughtai's standard because he was considered as Ustad. So the first word stands for like a master, somebody who's considered as a craftsman and not a fine artist. Same was the case with Haji Muhammad Sharif, who was also called as Ustad Haji Muhammad Sharif. Somebody who worked in miniature painting. And I have a couple of visuals to share in the next couple of slides. Second institute that we inherited was the Department of Art at the University of Punjab, right across the MODERNE School of Art and Craft, which was run by Anna Molka, a British artist who was appointed as the head of the department before the partition of Indian subcontinent. She was a very strong and energetic woman who played a pivotal role in promoting art in Pakistan. One has to imagine how hard it must be for a woman to convince students to join the art department, especially after the establishment of Pakistan, when painting department in colonial India was literally created for women to distract them from going to other manly fields. The idea was to train women to be good home decorators, says Salima Hashmi, one of the art educator and artist in Pakistan. Anna Molka was, so the slide that you're looking at is like, I'm now precisely focusing on Lahore and showing you the different artists who were working in different styles. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to establish the kind of prevalent practices happening in Pakistan at that time. So Anna Molka herself painted in post-impressionist style with socialist themes. This was a situation of Lahore at that time. And if we add up all of this, so if you had looked at this, I would just forward this and I would show you a slide where you are looking at these various styles that I just mentioned. I have added Faizi Rahmin on extreme right on the top, who's the person I mentioned was relocated to Karachi, who was trained in European academic style under the famous painter John Singer Sargent, but later he switched to Bengal school style upon his return to India. Another prominent figure at work was Zainul Abidin from East Pakistan, which I'm showing you right here, Dhaka, who was already well known for his economical drawings. Next to Zainul Abidin's work is Zubaida Agha's paintings, and for whom I want to say a bit more, which is than other artists for several reasons. Although she's outside the Lahore Art Circle, which is my focus, but she's a very important artist who actually was the first one to introduce modern abstract art in Pakistan. Since I'm talking at the platform of Foundation of Jacomati in Paris, I feel like it's important that I connect the development of modern art in Pakistan with Paris. Therefore, the two artists that are directly connected to Paris are Zubaida Agha and Shakir Ali. Zubaida Agha was born in eastern province of Punjab, Pakistan, in an affluent family in 1922. After receiving her bachelor's degree in philosophy in 1944 from Canaid College for Women in Lahore, she turned towards painting. She initially received informal training in traditional painting and drawing from Bhavesh Chandra Sanyal, a local artist based in Lahore, from his private studio. Zubaida was not, however, satisfied with the traditional ways of painting and wanted to learn more. Her brother, Agha Hamid, who was a well-known art critic, introduced her to an Italian war prisoner by the name of Mario Perelingeri, who happened to be in Lahore at that time and claimed to be a former student of Picasso. Zubaida spent several months learning the abstract language from him in the year 1946. After partition in 1949, Zubaida held her first solo exhibition at Young Men Christians Association in Karachi, which became quite controversial. Atiya Begum, a woman of intellectual stature, who was also the wife of the Karachi-based artist Faizi Rahmin, and I already showed you the figure in the beginning, wrote a harsh review on Agha's exhibition in the local newspaper, calling her work as adult type and fit for asylum. Many writers came to Zubeda's defense, not necessarily that they understood her work, but to encourage whatever new form of art she was introducing. This controversy stayed in newspaper for next several months, and although her exhibition was only up for a week in 1950, only up for a week. In 1950, Zubeda received a scholarship to study at St. Martin's, London. After 6 months of her stay in London, she moved to Paris in 1951 to study at École des Beaux-Arts. After completing her study, she held a solo exhibition at the Gallery Henri Tronchet in 1952. I would apologize for not having a good accent in French. She then returned to Pakistan and settled in Karachi, where she lived and worked. So here's another cutting from a French magazine which is publicizing her exhibition. Although Zubeda was, when she returned to Pakistan, she lived and worked in Karachi till 1961. Although she was a reclusive person and didn't like to be part of any group or lobby, she made significant contribution to the art history of Pakistan. From 1961 until 1997, Zubeda lived in the Twin Cities, Rawalpindi and Islamabad, and successfully managed an art gallery for 16 years. And she was a strong supporter and advocate of building the National Art Gallery of Pakistan, which actually happened 10 years after her death in 1997. I would now like to introduce Shakir Ali and the Lahore Art Circle, a small artist collective which was founded in 1952 by Shakir Ali, who, like Zubeda, also spent time in Paris in 1950s, in 49 and 50. Shakir Ali, an artist, a teacher, and an intellect, a key figure in the art history of Pakistan, who became the harbinger of modern abstract art movement in the first decade of Pakistan's establishment. A quick contextual info on Shakir, I feel like is important to discuss here, his educational background before discussing his return to Pakistan in 1951, his engagement with NOUVEAU School of Art, and the formation of Lahore Art Circle. Shakir was born in Rampur, North India in 1960 into a well-known family of Indian nationalists, Maulana Shaukat Ali and Maulana Muhammad Ali. Shakir received his initial education at home and initiated his formal education in arts in 1937 at the Uckel's Brothers Studio in Delhi, where he learned the traditional way of painting in Bengal School. And I'm showing you samples of his work, initial work that he learned there. After his training, he enrolled in JJ School of Art, Bombay, which is now called as Mumbai, where he was introduced to the European academic style of painting, as well as the aesthetic of Indian Ajanta cave paintings. By 1946, Shakir became well-versed in Bengal School and European academic style of art and went to London to study arts at the Slade School of Fine Arts. He was one of the few artists who went to London from British India to further his education in studio art. After studying in London between 1949 to 50, Shakir moved to Paris, where he worked under Lhote. And then, so I'm just showing you an example of the work, which is called as French Landscape. So showing you the shift in his work that happens after moving to France, to Paris, and then, after being educated in Slade School of Art. Later, Shakir studied at textile design at Charles University, Czechoslovakia from 1950 to 51. The time spent in Prague cultivated Shakir's intellect as he discovered the writing of Julius Pusek, a Czech communist journalist, and the poetry of René Rilke, which had a profound effect on his work. Shakir was 31 years old and was visiting Prague with his fellow students, attending the Communist First Democratic Youth Group when he decided to wave Pakistani flag to claim his Pakistani citizenship. In his word, I quote, "I decided to become a Pakistani citizen, a citizen of the new independent state, which had been born that day, which was August 15, 1947. And I'm quite proud to have been the first citizen of Pakistan to unfurl the Pakistani flag in Prague." End quote. Elsewhere, he noted, and I quote again, "I realized fully well that Pakistan was a young state, which urgently needed its own artist, so I decided to return." End quote. In 1951, Shakir returned to Karachi and then joined MODERNE School of Arts, Lahore in 1952 as its faculty member. Because of his intellectual nature, he immediately bonded with the Lahore Literary Circle, and I'm referring Lahore Literary Circle, which is different from Lahore Art Circle. Literary Circle, I'm only referring to the writers and poets. And being the only artist trained in Europe, he also became the center of attraction for all the younger artists. These interactions were happening at the Park Tea House and the Coffee House, two of the popular hotspots for the gatherings of writers, poets, visual artists, actors, directors, and film producers of Lahore, located across each other, very close to MODERNE School of Art, where Shakir was teaching, which is located on Mall Road. The young artists, vigilant and sensitive to their new surrounding, which was the new country, were struggling to find a new trajectory for their artistic expression. It was during this time that the young artist felt the need to create a platform for the exchange of ideas and knowledge that would encourage critical thinking, debate, and discussion on various matters of art and politics. Hence, Shakir became the tacit mentor for the young cohorts, and along with other 5 young artists, including Sheikh Safdar Ali, Muin Najmi, Sayyid Ali Imam, Ahmed Parvez, Anwar Jalal Shamsa, he founded the Lahore Art Circle. And this is the year 1952. Shortly after its founding, 2 women artists, Mariam Habib and Razia Feroz, also joined the group. Salim Shahid, who worked for Radio Pakistan, was the first general secretary of LAC. So what I'm establishing here is that this group was a really well-organized group. It wasn't like just people coming together, but it really had work put in terms of putting together their common goals and the ideas together. The group provided a support system of assurances to each other in a time when there was a scarcity of exhibition venues, galleries, viewers, and constructive criticism. So this is why I mentioned in the beginning, when I mentioned Zubaida Agha's work, which was not received warmly. I mean, superficially, people came to her defense, but it was a really difficult thing for the public to accept this kind of abstract art in Pakistan. Through Shakir Ali, Lahore Art Circle members, and now you're seeing the pictures of all the members on the screen, they saw the hope to find a new visual syntax, something quite different and away from prevalent practices. Safdar Mir, professor of English literature at Government College Lahore, brilliantly captures the conditions that led to the founding of Lahore Art Circle. He states, and I quote, Shakir joined the MODERNE School of Art and what is more important, came across a small group of very young and very violent enthusiasts of painting. These young painters had similar problems and a similar attitudes towards their solution. They're all iconoclasts, individualists, and breakers of tradition, mad. They were young. They believed in doing whatever they pleased. New experiences and an expanded scope had come to their way. A new nation was trying to forge itself into Unity to face the challenges of freedom. Shakir's view on modern art were different from the past interest of the artist. So what he believed was a combination of play of line, color, and form employed to express a mood rather than a story, inspired the young artist. Under Shakir Ali's mentorship, Lahore Art Circle members deviated from the traditional practices of miniature painting, European naturalism, and Bengal school style to incorporate a range of stylistic elements of modernist movements of 20th century, such as post-impressionism, abstraction, cubism, destyle, into the practices to establish a modern idiom grounded in South Asia. I wanted to mention here that most of the Lahore Art Circle members themselves were trained either in European academic style or Bengal school style of painting. So here is a glimpse of their pre-founding of Lahore Art Circle members' work to give you an idea of their earlier practices. You are seeing Shakir Ali, Anwar Jalal Shamsa, Sheikh Safdar Ali. Here you have already seen an example of Shakir Ali's work in Bengal school style. Ali Imam, Sayyid Ali Imam. And then you see a page from Sheikh Safdar's diary from 1944 to sort of give you a glimpse. And here's Ahmed Parvez. So on the left side, you see a picture that was printed in a catalog in 1952. We don't know the date, but Ahmed Parvez was basically trained by his uncle in European academic style. He didn't go to any school or university for a formal training in art. And you see Ahmed Parvez on the right side. Safdar Mir, the professor of English literature that I mentioned already, elsewhere writes that these, and I'm going to read from the slide, the young Pakistani artists felt what they had inherited from their past was too static, self-satisfied, smug, non-violent, and vegetarian. The colors washed too often and gave an impression of bleaching. The lines melodious, sugary, cloying, velvety, flowing, and metaphysically inane. The art of painting expressed none of the conflicts and tensions of a vigorous community facing the challenges of the post-World War. And I'm going to switch to this slide, and I want to leave it on for a few seconds so that you can see, the kind of work that happened as the Lahore Art Circle was founded. The young artists considered the prevalent art practices stale and static because they were either confined to mimetic representation or romantic and allegorical views of the glorious past of Muslims that was limited and could not address a wider audience across the globe. Furthermore, the idea of producing an art of pretty pictures in the traditional painting practices during such a time of chaos, unrest, and anxiety for the future seemed out of place and unreal. For them, the real task was not to recall the past, but to move the art practices in Pakistan towards a progressive direction, compatible with the rest of the world. They wished to explore their individual interest in alternative styles, subjects, techniques through adopting a range of idioms that were both modern and germane to Pakistan. I'm going to show you these two slides, which are of the two women artists who joined Lahore Art Circle a little bit late. My research is only focused on the first 6 ones, but I feel that it's really important that I show their work as well. The collective did not hold on to a neat order that would guide and define the fashion that its adherents were following in terms of subject matter, style, and technique. The continuous shift between still life, figurative, landscape painting among the members that sometimes alternated between realistic, abstract, and semi-abstract subjects represented what I call is heuristic modernism, one that continuously evolves with experimentation. Although the members of the Lahore Art Circle developed the work in diverse style, there were a number of underlying goals common between them. The artists developed a productive dialogue through their work. For example, if one artist presented an idea of exploring a certain subject matter, the rest would reflect upon it in individual ways. Ideas were continuously reflected and refracted between the members, thus developing a discourse on various issues of abstraction, stylization, and aesthetics. As you can see on the screen, I'm showing you an image. It's an example. The theme is of anarkali, a famous Mughal courtesan from Akbar's era, 16th century we're talking about, notorious for having affairs with both Akbar and his son, Jahangir, which ended in a sad demise of anarkali, being entombed alive in a wall by Akbar. So the two artists from Lahore Art Circle takes up the theme of anarkali and very differently responds to it. It shows the range of styles and reflects the dialogue between the artists through their works and their development of individual styles rather than upholding a monolithic movement. There are several other comparisons that is part of my larger research project. There were 4 exhibitions credited to Lahore Art Circle as a group, and I'm going to show you those on the screen. Not all Lahore Art Circle artists exhibited together. That is something that I find very interesting, but they exhibited in groups of 2 and 3, and only once exhibited as a group of 6. Not all of them ever showed together. So the show that I curated in 2016, which was called as the Lahore Art Circle, Naya Daur and the Lahore Art Circle, In that, I sort of like put together all of the 8 artists in one exhibition. The first 2-person show Lahore Art Circle held was Anwar Jalal Shamza and Sheikh Safdar Ali at the United States Information Center, Murray in 1953. The second show included Muin Najmi, Anwar Jalal Shamza, Sayyid Ali Imam, Sheikh Safdar Ali, Razia Feroz in Murray again. And then you see the other one that I show on the screen. So Lahore Art Circle did not establish a singular style, but worked in a diverse way. Therefore, instead of trying to joining these painters together in terms of a common style, they might be more convincingly be united in terms of the many questions they were empirically posing through their art, questions that would preclude only one direction. Hence, Lahore Art Circle was founded on its members' common belief to have the freedom to create art without yielding to pressure to develop the pictorial equivalents of an Islamic art or traditional art practices. Lahore Art Circle's disposition was towards international modernism, and instead of being attached to any one singular Western art movement of modernism, they were looking at various examples of modern art movements in Paris through Shakir Ali and Zubaida Aga, Munich, London, and New York. They were inspired by the larger modernist language and movements of international abstraction, such as grid-inspired structures, rejection of representational illusions, use of the straight edge shapes, with simplified line drawing, use of flat and heavily textured vivid colors. Thus, Lahore Art Circle painters invented and innovated and multifaceted visual idiom of modern. I also want to make a point here, and I hope that it was visible looking at the works of these artists, that there was no nationalistic agenda at work in these collectives' practices. Having said that, I will also posit that they were highly conscious of the new nation state. I see their practice moving in the direction of abstract art as a way to shed the old colonial skin. So in a way that they were holding a very precarious position to be like really in between that secular and the nationalist. Between 1949 to 58, like many artists from Southeast Asia and former British colonies traveled to United Kingdom to either study art or because they were frustrated by the lack of critical and international perspectives in art institutions at home. And many artists moved to London because they simply wanted to be part of the international art world. This includes artists like Sayyid Avinash Chandra, Iqbal Jafri, M.F. Hussain, F.N. Souza. Following the same trajectory, 3 of the 6 members of Lahore Art Circle also moved to London between 1956 to 58. And this is when Lahore Art Circle started to dismantle. Although there were several young artists who joined, it lost the spirit that it entailed while Shakir Ali was leading the group and all of them were together, including Shamza, Ali Imam, and Ahmed Pervez, and Safiuddin Ahmed and Murtaza Bashir from East Pakistan, who were not part of the Lahore Art Circle, also moved to London in 1957. These artists who were already established in their home countries encountered difficulty in trying to break into the Western art scene because they were viewed as representatives of their colonial past, not as contemporary artists. Some of them came to study like Shamza, who studied at Slade School of Arts in London, while Ali Imam and Ahmed Pervez simply followed him to continue their art practices in London. In 1958, Shamza, Imam, and Pervez included Murtaza Bashir, who now is known as Murtaja Basir, and Safiuddin Ahmed to once again form another group called Pakistan Group London. The mission of this group was outlined in the brochure of their first exhibition, which was held in Woodstock Gallery, London, in November of 1958. It stated, and I quote, "The aim of the group is to project Pakistani art and to introduce contemporary Pakistani artists, to create and provide opportunities and facilities for contemporary and young Pakistani artists to exhibit their work abroad." All 5 founding artists, Anwar Jalal, Shamza, Ahmed Pervez, Sayyid Ali Imam, Murtaza Bashir, and Safiuddin Ahmed exhibited their works, and the exhibition was titled as Pakistan Group London, 5 Modern Artists. What you're seeing on the screen is Shamza, Ahmed Pervez. In the middle is Ahmed Pervez's wife, Rani. So the General Secretary for Pakistan Group London, interestingly, was again Salim Shahid, who used to work for Radio Pakistan, now also moved to London, and he became the news broadcaster for BBC London Urdu services. After this exhibition, members of Pakistan Group London actively collaborated with other artists and held various group and solo exhibitions in London. When Ali Imam and his 4 other artist friends formed the Pakistan Group London, he noted, and I quote, "The first group of painters in the country, so to speak, all benefited by going abroad. They collected the latest information on modern art trends and techniques, were well versed in the history of art and important schools of painting. They also studied painters, their works, and the significance of their various places in the history of modern art movement. It was a different life altogether. Friends met and shared what they had. Material things were far less important in those days." End quote. The formation of this group further strengthens and clarifies Lahore Art Circle's importance and the germinal power it had on its first generation of artists. In conclusion, I will posit that the double burden of rejecting the colonial past and yet embracing the nostalgia of the glorious Islamic past of the Mughal period was at the core of the nationalist agenda of the newly formed nation state of Pakistan. However, Lahore Art Circle members' work, although produced during the most volatile period of Pakistani history, did not conform to these nationalist or Islamic agenda of the newly established country. Instead, the hybrid syntax of their work provide a distinctive case study of international modernism and negotiations of localized approaches towards adopting a distinctly modern art outside mainstream Western modernism, yet nonetheless informed by some of its major objectives and developments. Their works can be considered as reflecting a hybrid identity of bridging secular and modern worlds. In fact, the diversity in each member's work signifies the fact that there was not a single approach that could have become the foundation for the group. In retrospect, it appears that they actually teamed up to preclude one foundation. So they were able to create works that would pose questions rather than answers to their practices. Having said this, I also want to argue that these artists very much valued and understood the establishment of Pakistan. And that becomes very obvious when they made the second group, claiming the Pakistani identity in the name as Pakistan Group of London. Thank you.